Welcome back to the channel. This is another viewer inspired comparison video of some insulation testers. This one was requested by Juan Lucas Nitti, and what I'm going to compare is the Megger MIT-420 on the left to Fluke 1587 FC on the right, and in the middle the instrument one requested is the Sonel MIC-30. Okay, kick off with the Fluke 1587 FC. Costs around about £735 in the UK recommended retail price. I can get that down to around about £550 from instrument suppliers, and even down to £450 on eBay. You get the meter itself. The accessories you get is a K-type thermocouple there for the temperature measurements, a set of silicon test leads with 4mm connectors on them, set of probes to match, set of croc clips to match, and the remote probe, all housed in a pretty robust blow moulded case. Plenty of room for other bits and pieces that you may want to stick in there, and a little instrumentation pocket up at the top here that you can house instructions, calibration cert, etc. The Megger MIT-420, again, blow moulded case to house everything in. This one is a little bit shaped a little bit better, and the meter actually sits in quite solidly in a little cutout there. Alongside that, you again get a set of silicon test leads with some short probe tips there, and a set of croc clips there, and you get a remote probe that has an extended probe tip there should you require it, and that's pretty much all you get in that. There's no thermocouple with this instrument because it doesn't have the ability to measure temperature. And in the UK, this recommended retail price is £660. Again, there are offers around down to about £480, continuing down to about £400 on eBay if you shop around. And finally, the Sonel here, completely different approach. You get this little soft case, satchel kind of case to house the instrument in. The instrument sits in the centre pocket in there. You do get a hanging strap to go with the instrument. You also get a strap to hang it from the top as well. It's not magnetic, it's a plastic hook to hang the instrument with from wherever you can find, really. And then inside you've got a set of test leads. With this instrument you get 3 test leads, the red and the black, and you get a blue test lead as well. I'm trying to find it out. Yeah, this black lead as well is a shielded test lead that you can use with the guard terminal on the instrument. Neither the Fluke nor the Megger have a guard terminal, so they don't have a shielded test lead. And in the pocket you get test probes to match and a croc clip, and then the other bit is a little documentation holder in the back of the case there, should you desire it. But yeah, fairly spacious case. Not sure that it gives as good a protection as the blow moulded cases do, but the soft cases do have some advantage, I guess. Now the Sonel here retails for around about £700 in the UK recommended retail price. There are very few dealers in the UK for Sonel instruments, which is a shame because they are quite nice instruments indeed. So it's hard to get a deal on them, and the best I could find was on eBay, which is £560, but that was available from America, and that is with a £113 delivery charge, so not much of an improvement in price there, really. I believe Sonel do actually have an outlet in the US of A anyway, so you can probably get their instruments at a better price over there, or more competitive price to other instrumentation. So it kind of sits in between the MIT-420 and Fluke 1587 in terms of price. Okay, a bit closer look at the accessories. Look at the remote probes first from Megger and from Fluke. A little bit more of a chunkier design from Megger with their probe on the left here. Both of them have a removable GS38 cap, which if you want to get into the smaller terminals you'll need to remove, and then you can get, that's the wrong hand isn't it, you can get into any of the terminals you require really. It's tighter on the Megger. What the Megger does have is an extension probe that you can put on, and then you can maintain the GS38 protection. You can get in all terminals you like there. So that's quite a nice feature. As I said, the Sonel doesn't have a remote probe comes with it. I don't believe there is a facility for the instrument. It does have what's called a WSO4 adapter that plugs into the top of the instrument and allows insulation testing, automated insulation testing, to be carried out on a single phase live neutral and earth system. I don't actually have that adapter to demonstrate that. It's only available with a Shuko style connector on it, which isn't compatible with my country. Neither the Megger nor the Fluke offer any form of automated testing in that manner. In terms of probes, all of them have red and black probe come with it. There's the Megger. So Megger, obviously we've been down this route before if you've seen the other videos. It's a bespoke connection here on the Megger for plugging the probe tips onto, so you can't plug a standard 4mm accessory. It just doesn't go over the clip in the same manner that the probe does there. So you have that. These, as I said before, some of the nicest probes. You'll easily gain access to the smallest of terminals, no problem whatsoever. Very, very nice probe from Megger there. The Fluke. So the Fluke has, as the same as their remote probe, a removable GS38 cap, he says. Which you have to remove to get into the smallest terminals. You can then get in the smallest terminals easy enough. With the cap on, you cannot get in there. You can just get into a 6mm and upwards terminal. Slightly different approach from Sonel. They are a much beefier, much bulkier probe. They are standard probe, they're not fused. They are quite wide tipped here, and as per the Megger, the insulation is fixed. There's no removable aspect to that. You cannot get in a 2.5, you can get in a 4. So one up from the Fluke probe tips, but not quite as good as the Megger ones. So that's them there. Crop clip wise, as I said, you only get one crocodile clip with the Sonel. I do not know why. It's an instrument that can carry out DAR and pi testing. Therefore, in my opinion, you would need more than one crocodile clip to do that with. You don't want to hold probes on for 10 minutes to carry out an insulation test. That's silly. So I don't know why they don't include it as standard. They will sell you them as optional extras. To my mind, if you're paying £700 for an instrument, it really should come with all the basics that it needs. In terms of their jaw capacity, pretty much the same as the Fluke there, slightly bigger than Megger. There's not an awful lot in it. They do quite happily go around 12 stud obviously, and the M12 not there, no problems. Fluke does as well. There we go. And the Megger, you're kind of hitting the limit on the M12 nut there, but it does go around. They are perfectly usable in that respect. Okay, looking at the actual instruments themselves, before I do anything else, I'm going to test the backlights just to show what they're like, because you know how poor I am at using up the batteries. Let's turn the backlight off and hopefully you can see a little bit better. You see the song unit defaults to having the backlight on. Actually has 2 stages to the backlight. So that was stage 1, this is stage 2 here. contrast, you only have stage 1 on the other 2 instruments. There's the Fluke, and where you go? There's Megger, and then you can turn them off. So much brighter even on stage 1. The MIC-30 there has a much brighter backlight, a much larger screen, but the digits are about the same size as those on the Fluke. They're a little bit smaller than the digits on the Megger there. The Megger seems to make a bit more use of the screen than the other instruments do. Turn to insulation. Okay, so that's the backlights. Turn them off, turn the main light back on. First setting on the instruments is voltage measurements for all of the instruments. They are all Cat 4 600 volt input protection rated. They will measure from the Megger here 0.1 millivolts to 600 volts. The Fluke will measure from 0.1 millivolts up to 1000 volts, and the Sonel here will measure from 0.1 volt up to 600 volts. So it's got the narrowest range of voltage measurement. For the Megger, it defaults to an AC/DC mode. Using the TRMS button here, you can change that to an AC mode or a DC only mode, or back to the AC/DC mode. For the Sonel here, you only have an AC/DC mode that's automatic. You do not have the option to manually select AC or DC. With the Fluke here, AC and DC is selected off the function switch. It defaults to AC on the first position. You also have a low pass filter. The low pass filter is built into both of these instruments. This instrument is accurate only from 45 Hz to 65 Hz. Megger is 15 Hz to 400 Hz. Frequency when you're on AC mode will be displayed in the top of the screen here. For Fluke, you have to hit the Hertz button and you can get the Hertz displayed. And for the Sonel here, you don't get any Hertz measurement capability whatsoever. On the Fluke here, it will go from 0.01 Hertz up to 99.99 kilohertz, so a much wider range for frequency measurement on this instrument. To go to DC mode on the Fluke, you have these extra positions, which is DC volts and then millivolts DC, and in the millivolts DC position you also have temperature measurement. With the included thermocouple, neither of these two instruments will measure temperature. Next position round, let's go insulation. Both the Megger and the Sonel move to insulation testing on the next position. With both of these two instruments, there is a fixed setting for each of the positions, 50, 100, 250, 500, 1000. Same for the Megger here. The initial position is a 50 to 1000 volt variable voltage function on the Sonel. For the Megger, the variable voltage function is around here at the end. On the Fluke over here, the voltage selection is electronic. Again, you've got 50, 1000, 250, 500, 1000. So same test voltages, just electronically selected. There is no variable voltage function on this instrument. However, you do have a smoothing function that you can switch on and off for high resistance measurements. In terms of functionality within the insulation test, all these instruments can do pi and dar. Pi there, dar there. You can do a pi, dar, and a timed function there that you set off of the settings function. Turn to 250. For the Sonel, you can set the times based upon a T1, a T2 and a T3, and it will then record the ratios. So it's currently set to 60 seconds, 30 and 15. If you change those, change it up to the 600, you'll get the pi. On the 60 you get the dar. So it is in there, it's just a slightly different way. During an insulation test, both the Megger and the Sonel will display either the current or the insulation resistance reading. You'll only get insulation resistance reading on the Fluke. In terms of test range capability of these instruments for insulation testing, 100 gigaohms at 500 volt test voltage. For the Megger, goes up to 200 gigaohms at 1000 volts. For Fluke over here, it's 550 megaohms at 500 volts, going up to 2.2 gigaohms at 1000 volts. And for the MIC-30, it's 20 gigaohms at 500 volts, going up to 100 gigaohms at 1000 volts. So the Megger wins out, hands down on that. The Sonel here, for modern day installation systems, the IEC and IEEE standards allow me to go up to 5 gigaohms for the 1 minute. And generally speaking, the vast majority of DAR and pi, or pi ratios really, will be sort of like 2 to 3. So you will get away with, that will put you in the 15 gigaohms region. So you will get away with pi testing the majority of times at 500 volts with this instrument. Occasionally, the worst case I've been, so I say the worst, the best case I've been up to is around at 8 for a polarization index. I think I was on around about 30 gigaohms, 35 gigaohms at the 10-minute mark. So that would be out of the reach of this instrument, but it would probably cover sort of like 75% of the testing that I do and scenarios that I've come across. The Fluke instrument in that respect is quite a poor test range for installation test and resistance, and to my mind, the systems I work on is just not capable for doing trending on modern day installation systems. Go no-go testing it's fine with, but trending actual installation resistance values, it's a poor instrument for. So let's turn him back to auxiliary functions. For the Fluke here, you have ohms and capacitance. Ohms is over here on the Megger, and capacitance is the next one along. For the Sonel here, you have a continuity function, which is the 200 milliamp test, and you have a standard resistance function here, and then the zeroing is actually off the third position on the switch just there. These other two instruments work slightly differently. Ohms and continuity are all on the same test function. For the Megger here, it is also 200 milliamps. The Megger here will measure from 10 milliohms up to 1 megaohms, fully automatic. The 200 milliamp test current will drop as the resistance increases. For the Sonel here, the continuity and the resistance reading are split across these two functions. Only the continuity has a 200 milliamp test, but both functions will only operate from 0.1 ohms up to 2 kilo ohms, so quite a reduced resistance reading capability on the Sonel there. For the Fluke here, you have the ohms that will measure from 0.1 ohm up to 50 mega ohms, so much wider resistance range reading, but you have no 200 milliamp test facility that you use for earth bond testing in my country. So in that sense, the Megger loses out to the other two instruments. As I said, lead zeroing on this is off of its own special function on the rotary switch for the Sonel. For the Megger, you do it on the same range with the zeroing button here, which doubles up as the test button for an installation test. Interestingly enough, for the Fluke here, you have no lead zeroing function built into the instrument, which is quite surprising because it's a relatively standard function for a multimeter. Moving around a bit further, we'll go on to continuity. So these two instruments have a built-in continuity buzzer on their ohms ranges here. For the Fluke, you move around a setting to get to the continuity. You also have a diode test in the continuity function. Neither of these two instruments have a diode test facility built into them. Flicking back one, you move on to capacitance. That's one position round on the Megger. Capacitance for the Fluke, you will measure from 1 nanofarad up to 10 millifarads, so a very, very wide range there. For the Megger, you will go from 0.1 nanofarads to 10 microfarads. Now the Sonel does have a capacitance function. measures from 1 nanofarad up to 9.9 microfarads. However, it's a function built into the insulation test. So after you've done an insulation test, you can get a capacitance value out of it. That means that you are testing capacitance at a minimum of 50 volts, whereas these two instruments are a standard much lower voltage test voltage for a capacitor. I guess if you're aiming this at electricians anyway, and capacitors on lighting circuits and motors, testing at 50 volts isn't an issue. However, the manufacturer doesn't give a tolerance for a 50 volt test, only gives a capacitance tolerance for a 100 volt test voltage and above. So really you need to be testing at 100 volts to do a capacitance test on this instrument. The other problem is, because you're doing it on the insulation and you're effectively charging up the capacitor, it takes much longer to do a capacitance test on this instrument than it does on either the Fluke or the Megger, because you have to wait for this to settle. So it is there, but it's not as user friendly as these other two instruments. And then we move to the unique functionality, I guess, of the Fluke 1587 for current measurement that neither of these two instruments can measure. You can only measure current as a voltage across a drop of resistor, whereas this has a direct current measurement, 0.01 milliamp up to 400 milliamp. And that's the pretty basic functionality of the instruments, really. So I'm going to make this point the end of part 1 of this video. Thanks for watching, hope you found it useful, and I'll see you in part 2 of the comparison between the MIT-420, MIC-30 and Fluke 1587 FC.